And welcome to the second episode of Pit Lane Parley. My name is Mike Jokum, and with me I have my super special co-host, Jess Baker. Jess?
Super special? Yeah.
I thought that was a very positive way of putting it.
I had to make fun of it a little bit, it's just what I do.
That's fine. So, listen, before our first episode, it was kind of a quiet time in IndyCar news, or there wasn't too much going on for a couple weeks here, and then the last week has been pretty crazy. What was was one thing that really stuck out to you out of all the news this week?
Hello, Carlin Racing.
Yeah.
Didn't really see that coming at all. I'm glad to see a new team. I'm a little concerned, and I really hope they have a big pocketbook.
Yeah, I echo your concern, but it's really amazing that they were able to get Trevor Carlin not only one car but two cars for a full season, which kind of seems unheard of in this day and age, in a new team jumping right in for a full season. I know he had Indy Lights for a couple years, but I thought they might go the way of Michael Shank or Juncos and go maybe 6 or 8 races or so. But when you are the Carlin Empire, I think that definitely helped. And with that sponsorship that both Kimball and Chilton provide, I think it's the perfect recipe for a good time to jump in.
I agree. I could have maybe seen one team or one car for a whole season, but 2 is definitely unheard of. Like I said, I just hope he's got big pocketbooks and it doesn't all fall apart on him. I think that it's definitely going to be something to watch, because, man, that's a big leap to go from nothing to a 2-car team out of nowhere.
And I do agree, but everywhere Carlin goes, not only are they successful, they're successful quickly. They jumped right into Indy Lights. Trevor Carlin sent over his F2 or GP2, whatever you want to call it, boss, and said start up an Indy Lights program. And Ed Jones won 2 out of the first 3 races, won 3 races, and had 2 out of the first 3 poles. So I think if there's anybody that can make a jump like this, it's definitely somebody like Carlin, who has the money to have the resources, and also has 2 drivers who may not have been the most successful so far, but they are far from rookie drivers.
Oh yeah, they're definitely not rookies, but we all know, what we call it, everybody crashing out. We call that a Kimball. So
yeah.
Good luck to them. I really hope they do well, and I would really like to pick Trevor Carlin's brain, because, man, he's kind of a racing genius, honestly.
Yeah, it was very fascinating to listen to him talk yesterday. The guy kind of is one of those guys that probably has more gears spinning in his brain than the rest of us combined. So I think, maybe not this year, but in the next couple years, we will see a Carlin race winner at some point.
It'd
maybe
be awesome.
Even Max Chilton. That's my pick. That's my guess.
I can't really disagree there.
Moving on, there is one thing I forgot to mention last week, and I feel a little bad, and if Robert Wickens happens to be listening or listened at some point, I apologize. In our chat about the rookies next year and who our pick for Rookie of the Year was going to be, I completely forgot about him, and then today on the front page of motorsport.com was the fact that he had his first test in the new IndyCar. So, Mr. Wickens and Team Canada, I apologize.
Yeah, I completely spaced it also, and congrats on your first test day, and getting to pick Hinch's brain and see how that went. I'd love to hear what he has to say about the handling of the car, because that seems to be the most interesting piece for all the drivers who have tested so far.
Yeah, I was a little disappointed in his post-practice interview that he really didn't get much into, how the car felt. I guess he doesn't really have anything to compare it to.
Right.
But, coming from sports cars for the last 6 years, I don't really know what to expect of him coming into this year, but he's been successful every racing series he's been in, so I think he'll be just fine, but I don't know what to expect.
Yeah, I really don't either. I think having Hinch as a teammate will definitely benefit him. But yeah, I really have no idea. It's kind of up in the air. But honestly, so is everybody this year, so we can't really rule anyone out.
Yeah, I feel like it's going to be for the most part, a very unpredictable year. Everything I've read about testing so far, Kanaan, and AJ Foyt got to test yesterday, and Kanaan was really excited about how the car kind of felt like a throwback where you really had to put in some effort and the car didn't drive itself with a massive amount of downforce. And to me, that just shows that, you can't afford any mental breaks. You can't take a lap off or you can't take a corner off. Otherwise, somebody's going to gobble you up or you're going to end up spinning out and into the wall.
Well, and not only that, lacking mental attention, but most of these younger up-and-coming guys have never driven a car that they really have to drive. They have been given cars that are going to stick to the track no matter what they do, and mistakes, didn't really necessarily matter as much as they're going to now, and so I think it's going to really kind of start to separate the field.
Yeah, no, I think that's definitely fair, and if there's one thing that you and I, as people who have never driven an IndyCar, can say, it's if your fitness is not in tip-top shape, to these young guys, it's time to start working out and pulling the two-a-days, and I could probably say the same for myself, but especially for these guys who are going to have to put a lot more effort into driving a car, being in your best fitness possible is going to be incredibly important.
Yeah, for sure. And like you said, being there mentally, because I've read everything and everybody seems to say that there's virtually no room for error. So it's going to be really interesting to see the first corner of the first lap of the first race, because it's always interesting anyways. And man, with a car that's not forgiving, it should be a real treat to watch.
Yeah, I liked that, out of some of these testing practices so far, the interviews have been pretty cut and dry and, your standard interview talk, post-test sort of thing. I really appreciate the fact that Kanaan said, listen, I was going into a corner and I went, holy hell, I need to start braking 200 feet before I did before and really drive the car through the corner, and that the downforce wasn't going to do it for me. That right there was everything I wanted to hear about off-season testing, and if I wasn't excited enough before about the new car, I'm extremely excited about it now.
Don't sugarcoat it. He dropped an S-bomb.
Yeah, I wanted to do that, but iTunes doesn't let us curse.
Well, fine, but we can say S-bomb.
Yes. So, moving on, speaking of the new car, I had a little bit of a debate going back and forth with Mr. IndyCar PR man Arnie and a few other folks about the naming convention of the new car. Right now it's just UAK 18, and we're trying to come up with a sexier name.
Yeah, I saw Arnie said something like just the 2018 IndyCar. Boring.
Yeah, and then motorsport.com journalist Chris DeHardy, you're welcome for the plug there, said, how about the DW18? And I liked that. I thought that was a little bit more on the right track. But that will be our Twitter question of the week. I'll put a poll up with some options, and we'll report back next week. And speaking of that, the results from the first one we're in. For those who don't remember, the question was based on Jess's pit lane pitfall of the ugly new F1 logo. We had 28 results, and 24 people agreed with us that it was an ugly logo. So the 4 of you that liked it, thankfully Twitter doesn't tell me who you are, because I would like to understand why.
Yeah, feel free to pipe in if you are one of those 4. Definitely send us a DM or just get with one of us, because I don't get it.
Yeah, and social media plug. All of our social media is at Pitlane Parley, Parley. So, Jess, I know there's a topic you wanted to touch in the whole Carmen Jorda being named the FIA woman in charge, whatever her position was called. I was so frustrated reading the article, I didn't read what her title was. So I'll turn that over to you for your thoughts first.
Yeah, it's it may end up, by the time we get to the end of this, being my pit lane pitfall of the week. I mean, what is going on? I know the FIA is a little backwards thinking anyways, but a women's league, it's just degrading, honestly. And the fact that she would be willing to take the position, that's kind of telling about what kind of mentality that she has going into this.
She did say something about women can't hold up to men in racing, something along those lines. I mean, within the last year or two. Am I not correct?
She did, yeah. I'm trying to find the article right now, but it's it's so disappointing from a woman's perspective. And this is kind of odd for me. And I hope if you're listening, you won't take too much offense, but I don't really agree with Pippa Mann most of the time with a lot of things that she says or does. But man, she has been on top of this, and she has done nothing but say this is a terrible idea and this is disgusting, and I am 100% with her on this.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I think it's funny you have, Carmen being appointed to a position like this. Meanwhile, back in IndyCar, we have Schmidt-Peterson trying to hire. Now I'm probably going to butcher her name here, so I apologize. But Lena Gade, coming from the now defunct Audi Sport LMP1 team. She's won Rolex 24s, Le Mans. She's won the big sports car races on from an engineering standpoint. So you have IndyCar, who is trying to, find the best of the best, regardless of if it's a man or a woman, and then we have FIA trying to almost segregate it, and it just, I wholeheartedly think that hiring the best person, whether it's for a driver or an engineer or a tire changer or whatever position, shouldn't matter who it is. If you're the best, you're the best. And to me, that's, it should come down to how smart you are and how hard you work and how good you are at your craft. And, if you're not good at your craft, you shouldn't be appointed a position there. And I don't really think Carmen Jorda ever had any sort of success. And it's not because she was a woman. I just don't think she had great successes. Maybe she just wasn't a great driver.
Yeah, I can honestly say I don't think I've ever actually seen her race, so I can't really touch on whether she's a good driver or not. However, just the fact that she thinks that women can't compete, I mean, have you watched other series? For instance, just look at NHRA. Now, granted, I've heard many things this week, including things like an HRA is like the easiest type of racing, so they don't count. Oh, okay, really? That's weird, because I bet if you ask Erica Enders-Stevenson or Alexis DeJoria, who is now retired, I will give you that she retired after the last race this season, I just don't think that they would agree.
Yeah, I mean, I know you're not turning in an NHRA car, but those cars go, upwards of 300 miles an hour, and we saw Rahaal's wife's car blow up this year. It takes a lot of effort to keep that car in one piece and in a straight line. So to me, it's a different type of skill, but it's still very important to be skilled in order to succeed.
Yeah, I wouldn't just be able to go jump in one and win a race, not by any stretch of the imagination. I go to the U.S. Nationals every year, and frankly, Alexis was my favorite, and I'm really upset that she decided to retire, but she deserved to be my favorite. And I don't pick people just because they're a girl.
Right.
In fact, like I said, no offense to Pippa, I have to disagree with her on a lot of things. So I'm not really a Pippa fan. I think she's great for the sport. But I don't usually pick females just because they're females. I pick the people who I think have an exceptional amount of talent in whatever form of racing they're doing. And that can be anything from midget sprint cars, whatever. I mean, it's there's an incredible talent pool of females coming up who, I'm sorry, but they can show the guys what for.
Yeah, let's not forget Pro Mazda driver this year. I forget the team she's on because I don't have it in front of me, but Ayla Agren, is back in a Pro Mazda car, hopefully for a full season this year. And she only was able to get in a handful of races this year before she had some funding issues come up, I believe. But she's a hell of a driver, and somebody's given another chance this year. And I think she's going to do very well in Pro Mazda.
Yeah, I think she'll do great. She's just gotta use her talent and not try to, I guess, get sucked into this whole FIA thing, and I think I honestly think it could be really bad for the female drivers who give it any kind of credit. Not so much that they're going to do bad in racing, just that they're going to possibly think less of themselves and less of their talent. And I just really hate the whole idea of it, honestly.
Yeah, I think we can leave it at that and say I completely agree. Something interesting that came up this week that many people have complained about for years now is the point system for the Indy 500. As everybody knows, not only do you get double points for the race, you get points for qualifying. So somebody like Scott Dixon, who finished towards the back of the pack because of his scary accident, finished with more points than somebody who finished in 10th or 11th place. The name's escaping me right now, but I remember reading that. Going to a more traditional, how they do, points for every other race, where you get 1 point if you get the pole and no points if you get any other position. I think that the fact that they're even, Jay Fry's come out and said, listen, we're definitely considering it. Double points are going to stay for Indy 500 and Sonoma, which I don't love, but if they change the qualifying points, I think it's a step in the right direction. Definitely curious as to what you think, but I think, listen, if they go back to even if they did, listen, you get 5 points for the pole and 2 points if you get somewhere with, only the top 10 get points for qualifying. Really make it, if you're going to qualify for the Indy 500 and you want some extra points, you really need to qualify in the top 5 even.
Well, everything about the 500 is in threes, so let's just go ahead and make it the top 3.
Okay, I'm all for it.
I'll give the top 3 bonus points, so to speak, for qualifying up there, and then the rest. Even if you did 1 point just strictly for qualifying, because this year it looks like there is a possibility for getting bumped. So getting 1 bonus point for qualifying for the 500, and then you get more if you're in the top 3. I mean, it would make things a little more interesting, especially with that whole potential of possible people getting bumped.
Yeah, no, I think it's all in all, one of the many things that's come up this week that makes me excited about 2018, and that Jay Fry is really putting some thought into and effort into how do we get IndyCar to become mainstream again. But one thing you said that jogged my memory is the fact that we might actually have some bumping this year. Now, I think the last I read we're up to 28 confirmed for the Indy 500 with the one-offs and the guys who are doing a handful of races this year. And, we still haven't confirmed, a second Ed Carpenter car and a second Dale Coyne car. So that puts us at 30 with, maybe... I'm trying to think of where else you could come up with a handful, but you should probably easily come up with 33. And, with this new car, maybe you get Carlin adding a third for a 500. I know I read he bought multiple chassis. So, especially if he has some early season success, maybe he, throws his hat in the ring and brings up another driver, or you get Ed Carpenter with a third car for the 500. There's obviously endless possibilities. Maybe who knows? I just want to see what you think.
Yeah, I saw the same thing. 28 current confirmed, and I can't even remember. Somebody had on Twitter had put together a list of possibilities. Of course, there was the possibility of extra Ganassi cars, the possibility of extra Penske cars, and those are always a possibility if the right driver came along. And, well, to use Chip's words, it was a business deal that both parties would be successful with. I don't see either one of them turning down the right driver. So I definitely can see us at least having enough to maybe get one person bumped. And wouldn't it be a shame if it was just Miss Danica? Oh, I'm sorry. Did I say that out loud?
It's funny is I was just about to say, I wonder if that 28 includes Danica. I can't find the list off the top of my on my computer right now.
That's confirmed. That's cars. I believe the majority of those do currently have current drivers. She is not included yet because she hasn't done a deal yet. It'll be interesting to see who she lands with. I definitely think she will land with somebody, but man, it would be interesting to see if she got bumped. I honestly think that I would probably scream with joy.
Yeah, I think no matter who it is, I'm going to take the political approach here. No matter who it is, if there's a possibility of somebody getting bumped, I think that's going to make qualifying weekend even more exciting, and that can only be good for the sport and good for people willing to give it a chance to be that 33rd car, and we see maybe 34 this year. Next year we have Juncos as a full-time team, maybe Michael Shank even, maybe Harding adds a second car, and all of a sudden you're looking at, you might have 35, no, 36. I know that might be reaching for the stars, but I think it's it's definitely possible and definitely great to see.
I'll tell you from years past, when there's been bumping, the emotions are unbelievable in pit lane. So you'll definitely want to be around for that.
And I forgot, we've seen, AJ Foyt often run a third car for the 500 or, the whole month of May. So that's definitely another possibility. And maybe Juncos, last year they had 2 cars for the 500. So we have, Kaiser for 1 confirmed, although this website I'm reading has his name spelled wrong. So maybe they have a Sebastian Saavedra again in that second car. So the more I look at this list, the more I think we can definitely get to 34 this year.
Yeah, I don't really see it being a problem, at least not right now. Obviously, if the beginning of the season goes kind of poorly for some teams, money can always be a problem for the 500. It is extremely expensive to run that month. So it could be a problem, but I don't really necessarily see it being an issue as of right the moment.
Yep. No, I agree. So another, interesting topic I wanted to hit on, it's come up in the news recently, but it also came out in the news maybe a month or so ago. Jay Fry again talking about making some changes next year, and one of the changes discussed was tire allotment for a full weekend, giving guys outside of the top 10 and rookies, no matter where they are, an extra set of tires for the entire weekend. And my initial thought is still kind of the same after I read a recent article where Fry said they were going to supply an extra set of reds for everybody for practices to get more cars out, for every practice, which I think is a great idea in itself. The outside of the top 10 and the rookies, now what happens after the first 2 races, this year, or last year, for example, Will Power is unable to race the first race because of a concussion, and the second race crashes out. Will Power doesn't need an extra set of tires. He's a very good driver and knows what he's doing. I don't think he needs that extra advantage over somebody like a Kyle Kaiser or Ed Jones or somebody who's a little bit younger. I don't know what the right answer is, but I don't think the right answer is anybody outside of the top 10. Because you guys outside of the top 10 this year, like Hinchcliffe and Hunter Ray for a bulk of the season, and Tony Kanaan, and is an extra set of tires in practice going to make that much of a difference to the veterans? I mean, maybe this year because the tire compounds are going to be different and the car is going to be different, but I think overall it's that wouldn't be the completely right path to go.
Yeah, I mean, I can kind of see where you're coming from, but at the same time, I also see where IndyCar is coming from and wanting to get people out on the track and get them more time. So I get that wanting to give rookies an extra set of tires, fantastic. Do you want to know why they're giving the guys not in the top 10 the extra tires? Because they want some of those guys out on the track for extra time, because those are the fan draws. Again, maybe Will Power, maybe Ryan Hunter-Reay, for whatever reason, they're not in the top 10, they're having a rough start to the season. Well, they get to the 500 and they get an extra set of tires. Of course, they're going to use them, so more people want to go to practice and watch them use them. So I kind of see where they're coming from, but at the same time, I get where you're coming from also. But you kind of said it yourself. It's a whole new car and whole new tire compounds. So really, it's kind of like everybody's going to be a rookie this year.
Yeah, and I think especially, not only are the compounds different, IndyCar and Firestone have been working very hard to make more of a separation between the primary black tires and the alternate red tires. so that if you go too long on the reds, there's more of a penalty. You saw, some races this year, guys really got a lot of laps out of those red tires and a lot of good laps. And, if they can make that gap bigger to where you're really taking a little bit more of a chance, not only taking more of a chance, you're taking more of a chance on a newer car. Could provide for some exciting racing. So I think from that front, they've really hit the nail on the head there.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how that plays out, but I don't know. I think I know some of the older guys have experience with cars that are less forgiving, so to speak. But I still think everybody's going to need an adjustment period for this. So I really don't see, at least this first year, giving the people outside the top 10 an extra set of tires being an issue. Now, after that, once everybody's used to the car, maybe just drop it down to just the rookies.
I think that's a good compromise. I can't argue with that one. One thing, speaking of the new car, and like you said about our previous topic, it might end up being my pit lane pitfall. New car testing, and I've seen a few drivers complain about it on Twitter. Marco has been the most vocal, wondering why Andretti wasn't included. And I thought, for the most part, it seemed pretty consistent that Chevrolet was the Penske guys, and Ed Carpenter, and Honda was Schmidt, Peterson, and Ganassi. And then yesterday, we saw AJ Foyt and Tony Kanaan out there. And by the way of things, it sounded like they kind of asked, like, "Hey, can we get in on this test?" And it was a very last-minute deal. I don't know exactly how it worked, but I would like to understand more, one, how they picked who they picked. Listen, obviously you're going to pick Penske and Ganassi to test your new cars. They've got the biggest teams. They've got the biggest, not only teams from a driver standpoint, but from an engineering and, and a crew's perspective to analyze the data and, probably the most sophisticated data equipment. Those are the guys you want testing. And I get Schmidt, Peterson, they're, a strong Honda team, and not only a strong Honda team, Hinchcliffe does a lot for the sport. And I get Ed Carpenter because they're a smaller team, but you want these teams to start being able to compete on a more weekly basis with the bigger teams. And especially, it's great for Spencer Pigot. The more seat time, the better. But I am curious, just like Marco, why didn't, Dale Coyne get to test? Why didn't Andretti get to test? And obviously the new teams aren't going to be able to test because they're still getting their stuff together. But I don't know what you think, and I don't really know what to make of it. I'm not a fan of people complaining on Twitter too much. Oh, I didn't get to test, blah blah blah. But it really did get me thinking. Why?
Well, not to totally disagree here, but that kind of is our stick.
That's okay, go ahead.
But listening to Marco complain about something that IndyCar did isn't unusual. Moving on.
Yeah.
Yeah, as far as how the teams got picked to test, I mean, I don't know if it was a hat draw. Maybe it was who paid first, so they got their cars first.
That's a theory I've seen floated around. Yep.
Yeah, I mean, who came up with the money to get their chassis first? And honestly, maybe it was the manufacturer who picked who tested. Who's to say that Chevy didn't pick and Honda didn't pick? I can't necessarily lay the blame at IndyCar's feet because we have no idea how they were picked. But yeah, listening to Marco complain yet again about something is not really unusual, and I honestly kind of take him with a grain of salt, which is you know, I think a lot of people do at this point, just because of everything that's going on. Like, you know, Rossi, give me your number because I'll do better. Really?
Yeah, the number switch generated a lot more backlash than I really expected it to. I looked at it and went about my day and really didn't pay too much mind to it, because I kind of figured with her to being on the stand for Marco last year was makes sense. I'm a big superstition guy and lucky numbers. I always had one lucky number, when I was playing hockey as a high school and college kid. But I know it's in IndyCar. It kind of comes and it goes. It's more about the sponsor, and Napa's staying with Rossi, which to me is more important than what number he's driving on the car. But it really did generate a lot more savageness than I expected Twitter to. But then again, it's Twitter, so how much should I really expect?
But the thing is I think everybody on Twitter who was savage is just so tired of Marco. I mean, how can you take him seriously anymore when that seems to be the only thing that he does do is complain and or show off pictures with him and some celebrity that, fantastic, great, you're on vacation again. But that's just my opinion. Yeah, and I won't disagree with that at all. I think the name is synonymous with IndyCar, honestly, and I agree that it would be really good for the sport if a young American would do really well. But yeah, I mean, an attitude adjustment would go a long way, even if he doesn't get better. People just get tired of it after a while. And one more thing to point out that happened around the time that Graham started to turn around his attitude. He got married, and guess what? Marco got married. So maybe a good woman will put him on the right path. The attitude changer might be a good girl. I'm just throwing it out there. I don't think that's necessary. Sometimes it takes somebody keeping you in line. Okay, so there's one more argument I would like to have with you this evening. Sometime over the summer, and I cannot remember when, and it's NASCAR, so don't ask me details. I don't know. Danica was recorded by some fans as she was walking through to head toward her garage. They were asking her for an autograph, and she may or may not have turned toward the camera and said, "That's not my effing job." So the question is that part of their job? Is pleasing the fans and giving autographs part of a driver's job? Or no, not really? Okay, so I see where you're coming from. Um, and just knowing from my previous experience in the sport, it typically is still written into IndyCar contracts by the sponsor. It's actually a sponsor contract, not their driving contract, that they have to appear at so many events. And yes, signings are part of their job. But this was a different situation. This was not at a signing or a a meet and greet type of situation. I agree that she used a poor choice of words. However, she's right. It's not her job when she's at the racetrack to stop for pictures, to stop and get, give every person that's standing there an autograph. So yeah, if it's not written into the contract, technically she's right. And my lord, I am agreeing with Danica Patrick. Oh man, you need to be around more. I have several times seen the attitudes fly. There's one who's pretty infamous. Not a current driver, former driver. He is extremely infamous for not signing autographs, and that's Mr. AJ Foyt. And I can't necessarily blame him. I mean that is that's his right to decide whether he signs for someone or not, and it's the same with the current drivers. It's their right, and I don't think that they should be forced into it. Yes, I agree though that IndyCar has made it part of their fan building forte, so to speak, that the drivers are accessible. So I think that if the drivers are in a public area where people can get to them, absolutely they should sign it. Now, if they're walking through pit lane or going through Gasoline Alley, I mean, Gasoline Alley is technically a public area. However, do they need to stop? No, I would not. I would not be upset if a driver just kept walking and he went to his garage. And definitely leave comments. Don't just click yes or no. We want to know your opinions. We want to kind of build on this and take it to the next level. Well, I mentioned it earlier, and it's kind of broad, but I'm gonna go with just the general idea of a women's only league. Now, granted, right now it's not anything set in stone. Carmen Jorda is not gonna run this league. That's imaginary. But they're moving toward that. And like I said before, I think it's really degrading. It's really disgusting that we're going back to like 1950 where everything has to be separate and women are basically lesser people. Well, I think IndyCar in this case really needs to take a lesson from IMS, actually. Just to look at what they're doing with Sato. I mean, they took the Borg Warner to Japan. So I think that IMS is doing an excellent job. Um, Absolutely, and they could do, I mean, easily with as much time as they've had off. They could have done the majority of the states, even if they only went to the states that were going to have races next year. Show him off. Yeah, I mean, I don't necessarily know that they're failing, but I think that the marketing team could have done more. But at the same time, that's something you can't plan ahead for. So it's kind of hard to be like, oh, hey, the season's over and we had you scheduled for this many appearances and now you won, so crud. I mean, I'm sure he would do more, but there again, we go back to the contracts, and man, he doesn't have to. That's just what I do. Absolutely agree on that. Yeah, no, I can't disagree with that. They just need to pre-plan a little. No, man, I just want to say one more time, please, please, please go on our social media, go on our website, start participating. We want you guys to get involved in this. We don't want to just be harping at you on what's going on. We want your opinions, and we absolutely will share those when we get them. And remember, keep your lug nuts tight.